Okay, so you've probably seen this story by now, but you know that Blake Neff, the former top writer for Tucker Carlson, recently stepped down and resigned because of racist blog posts. Now, Tucker Carlson went on his show yesterday to talk about this a little bit, and his apology slash explanation is pretty inadequate. Let's take a look.
Over the weekend, you may have seen stories about a writer on this show called Blake Neff. For years, since he was in college, Blake posted anonymously on an internet message board for law school students. On Friday, many of those posts became public. Blake was horrified by the story and he was ashamed. Friday afternoon, he resigned from his job. We want to say a couple of things about this. First, what Blake wrote anonymously was wrong. We don't endorse those words. They have no connection to the show. It is wrong to attack people for qualities they cannot control. In this country, we judge people for what they do, not for how they were born. We often say that because we mean it. We'll continue to defend that principle, often alone among national news programs, because it is essential. Nothing is more important. Blake fell short of that standard, and he has paid a very heavy price for it. But we should also point out to the ghouls now beating their chests in triumph at the destruction of a young man that self-righteousness also has its costs. We are all human. When we pretend we are holy, we are lying. When we pose as blameless in order to hurt other people, we are committing the gravest sin of all, and we will be punished for it. There's no question.
Okay, so you can see there clearly an inadequate response. I mean, the stuff that Blake Neff said was absolutely racist. I'm going to partially quote one thing just because I do think that it's important for us to understand the degree of this, but you also need, like, I mean, I can't go through and repeat some of this stuff because it's just so bad here, but you can see one quote here. Would you let a jet black Congo N-word do LASIK eye surgery on you for 50% off? And then he goes on saying, I wouldn't get LASIK from an Asian for free, so no. Another quote, he said that the only people who are interested in changing the name for the Washington Redskins, are, quote, white liberals and their, quote, university-educated pets, referring to African-American people who get educated with university degrees as pets. So, I mean, Chris, this is some of the most racist and horrendous things that I mean, this is so absolutely racist that I'm at a loss for words. I don't know what to say.
Yeah, I mean, this is a story that's getting a lot of attention, and I guess one of the things that's surprising to me is that this is surprising to so many people. I was just sort of operating on the assumption that, yeah, this is what you have over at that network. I mean, we're talking about a network that is pretty regularly trying to deny systematic racism of any kind, right? That it's not in how we fund our schools, it's not in the police forces, it's not in all these other things. There's just a bunch of apologies. Well, if you think that the inequality, the racial inequality in this country is not because of systemic issues, then you're only really left with some kind of racist conclusions. So if you spend your whole day writing for these kind of shows denying any kind of systemic racism, it seems to me like not surprising that at the end of the day, you'd flip over to some forums and put some pretty horrendous stuff out, because that's probably what's really going on the inside. And I'm not saying every Fox News employee is a racist, but it seems to me like if you're the host or you're a major writer and you have to toe this company line of always trying to say that there's no type of systemic racism, then the arguments that you're making are coming from somewhere, and they probably are a racist point of view.
And, you know, this is Tucker Carlson, the same show that had the quote where he said, quote, immigrants will not replace us. By the way, guys, Blake Neff, person who writes all the scripts for Tucker Carlson, writes it, and then Tucker Carlson goes on and reads it. You think that line wasn't intended to be racist? Remember what the Nazis used to always say. They'd say Jews would not replace us. Same thing that was chanted out in Charlottesville. You think that was not... Because what was the thing that they said? They turned around and they said, oh, well, you know, that's just immigrants will not replace us. There's nothing racist about that. There's no dog whistling there. Really? There's no dog whistling there. When the same person who wrote that line, immigrants will not replace us, was out there writing those horrendously racist blog posts. You think there was no connection there? I think there was a connection there. And then for Tucker Carlson there, you saw it there in that clip. Tucker Carlson running around. What did he say there? He said there was no connection to this show. What do you mean no connection to this show? Well, of course he meant to say the contents of this show, but how are you going to say that when he's the one who writes all of your scripts? He writes them. Yeah, you might contribute a little bit. You have a few ideas in there. And no doubt, I'm sure, Tucker Carlson, at the end of the day, obviously he's the one reading it, right? But to think that those ideas don't get in there is, I mean, it's laughable, but it's too disgusting to laugh at.
Right, and when you have a show that there's an obvious narrative that you're supposed to be pushing, and you're making lots and lots of money by pushing this narrative, I mean, you're going to hire the kinds of people that are going to be pushing that same narrative, right? And you're going to end up with what's probably a very toxic situation. And then these people are going to go off, and then they're going to write stuff on their own. I guess the thing I'm surprised about is that this individual didn't really think it was going to get back to him in some kind of way. Yeah. I mean, just the arrogance of thinking that you can go out and say these things and write these things, and that no one's ever going to connect the dots and then connect you. If you're connected to something that's a money machine, it's making millions and millions of dollars, and all of a sudden you become problematic, they're going to sever the ties, and you're not going to be a part of it anymore. So to endanger yourself in that way, to make some racist comments on a forum, just seems incredibly ridiculous.
And this isn't a story where this was something that he said 30 years ago, and then he came out and said, you know what, I was digging through my old stuff. I said this 30 years ago, and I was completely wrong. That's not what happened. That's not what happened, guys. And by the way, even if that did happen, you could look at Tucker Carlson monologues, and I imagine the story would still be, are you sure that you're really, truly apologetic? Nonetheless, though, we would be having a different conversation than we're having right now. But that's not what happened. That's not what happened. What happened here was he got caught, and some of the things that he had posted was literally from like a week ago. So this isn't something from the past being dug back up. This is something that was actively happening while he was writing for Tucker Carlson's show. While he was writing for Tucker Carlson's show. And I do think that we do need to have a conversation here about the viewership numbers for Tucker Carlson's show as well here. When we look at those posts, when we see the things that Tucker Carlson talks about on his show every single day, and we talk about the fact that Tucker Carlson's show is more or less one of the highest rated cable news shows, nightly news shows ever. Not just right now, but basically ever. I think it says a lot about American society. I think it says a lot about some people who go around saying that there's no such thing as racism in this country.
Right. No, that's exactly right. I mean, as much as I disagree with what goes over on that network, they're smart individuals, and they know how to make money. So they know what their show should be about. They know what their narrative should be to capture a certain audience. And there's apparently a certain audience who wants to hear this kind of stuff on television. And so you provide them with a show that does that, and you're going to make money off of it.
Yeah. All right. I got one more clip for you guys. Tucker Carlson now is going to claim that he's going on vacation suddenly. All right. Let's take a look at this clip here.
Well, we're out of time. Going to spend the next 4 days trout fishing. Long planned. This is one of those years where if you don't get it in now, you're probably not going to. If something dramatic happens, of course, we'll be back. We've got some tape segments for you. Brian Kilmeade will be sitting in. But in the meantime, we hope you have the best and happiest week, and we'll be back on Monday, if not before, 8 p.m. Eastern, the show that is the sworn and totally sincere enemy of lying, pomposity, smugness, and groupthink. Until then, the great Sean Hannity steps in from New York.
So, yeah, you can see there, now that he's suddenly broiled in controversy, he has a long planned vacation to go trout fishing, of all things, of course. Now, I don't doubt that he enjoys trout fishing. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. I have no idea, and I don't particularly care. But the idea that this is a long planned vacation, Chris, this is a lot of people are making fun of this one.
Yeah, I mean, no one believes it. It's one of those things where I guess it just sort of, it cuts the tension. Instead of having to be embarrassed, he can sit up there and say, oh, no, there's this other reason. Everyone knows he's lying, but then, people on his side aren't going to call him out, and then he gets to go have his whatever he's actually doing. Maybe he's going to go trout fishing. I don't know. But and then he can come back once they have more information about if this whole thing has blown over or if it's gotten bigger or whatever, and then they can decide what they're going to do with the show. But yeah, no one's fooled by that.
Yeah, the idea that he's suddenly on a long planned vacation and that he suddenly announces at last minute when he's embroiled in probably the biggest scandal of his career,
Right.
Yeah, right. I mean, this is the same thing that happened, I think, like a year ago or something like that on Tucker Carlson's show as well. He got into a scandal, not as big as this one. He went on vacation. Same thing with a number of other Fox hosts as well. They go on vacation conveniently when there's a scandal that hits. And now there's some people saying that what this means is that they are deliberating whether or not they're going to fire him. And I have no doubt that there's probably going to be a meeting, and they're probably, and that question is going to be floated. However, at the end of the day, it's going to come down to his ratings, I think.
Right.
And his ratings are, like I was saying, the highest. They are the highest. So it's pretty unlikely. I wouldn't say that it's impossible, right? So don't quote this back at me. But I think that it's unlikely he's going to get fired given how high his ratings are. What do you think?
Yeah, I don't think he's going anywhere. I mean that channel over there is clearly not focused on things like truth and facts and moral high ground stuff like that. It's about making money, right? And pushing a certain narrative. And as long as Tucker Carlson's going to toe that line, unless he gets in some bigger fiasco than this, I don't see him going anywhere.
Yeah, we'll have to see how it plays out. It is possible that there could be, he might have to change around some of his rhetoric on his show or something like that. I wouldn't be surprised if there were some stipulations that come along with it because, there have been some advertisers pulling away from his show, and that kind of thing does hurt. And you have a scandal like this. I imagine that, there'll be some kind of stipulations about the things that he can do into the future, but how much hold that'll have on the actual show, what those stipulations will be, who knows?
Yeah.
All right, Chris, thanks so much for joining us for this one. Guys, go check out his channel. It's Political Perspective. By the way, guys, he got this new thumbnail here. It has this, it's like a fist, and it's absolutely fantastic. So you're going to want to go check out his channel to go look at that new thumbnail, that new logo that he has for his channel, because it's so great and it looks amazing. How does that happen? How do you get such amazing logos? All right, you guys, thanks so much. We'll see y'all in the next one.